The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
If there's another area in the country that panics about snow as much as this one does, I'm not aware of it. Now, maybe that's the case somewhere else in the United States of America. But here in the Washington, D.C. area, I don't call it the DMV, the Washington, D.C. area, my lifetime, 2/3 of it, 3/4 of it here, it's all been about snow panic this time of the year. Now, what they're saying is chances of up to 5 inches, 90%. 6 to 12, 70%. More than 12, 50%. And this is where the weather people go crazy because it could be 2 feet of snow. And 2 feet of snow is significant snow. Believe me, I'm not telling you anything you don't know here, but I believe it was January of 2016 when we got pounded. And it was another deal like this. It started on a Saturday and didn't end until, or maybe it was even on a Friday. I think it started on a Friday, went all through Saturday, and by Sunday morning we started to get some clearing. And I remember going out to my driveway with a tape measure, and I measured 31 inches. Now, I don't know, some of that may have been drifts because that wasn't the total that we got at National Airport, but it was a lot of snow. And the plan was to start about 7:30 in the morning and continue to shovel until the championship games started, as they start this year on Sunday at 3 o'clock. And I got out there, and, man, I shoveled and shoveled and shoveled before I had a bad back. I couldn't do it now. And I got to the point where I had cleared the cars, and I lived in a cul-de-sac at the time. And I knew that when they plowed the cul-de-sac that they were going to plow me in because it kind of makes a big circle around the middle of the cul-de-sac, and they plow in the people that are at the end of it, as I was at the time. So it was going to be difficult to get to work on Monday. I knew that. And as it turned out, I was able to walk to the top of the hill. They still hadn't plowed it. And I was picked up by the producer to go do a Monday morning show, which is, in sports radio, when you get to the playoffs, that's a big deal. You're talking about the 2 games that will decide which teams are going to play in the Super Bowl. And he was able to pick me up at the top of the hill on Darnestown Road, and we got to work. And I got word from my wife that, in fact, the street had been plowed, but I knew we were going to be plowed in. And I was really sore from shoveling the day before. And when I got dropped off, I saw that I'd been plowed in, and I went, oh, my God. And just then, these 2 guys came by in a pickup truck, and they had shovels. And I just said, how much? And they said $50. I said, done. If they'd have said $150, I would have done it. It took them 2 guys, much better shape and younger and knew what they were doing. They got it done probably in 20, 25 minutes, but well worth it and got out. And in my cul-de-sac, that mound of snow, which the snowplow plowed in, it was still there when the NCAA tournament was starting. So some of it stayed for 6 weeks, right? Something like that. Wow. I hope we don't get something like that this time, but I think it's very much in play. And if in fact we do get pounded on Sunday, I'm not going to be here Monday because I did make it in last year. Last year we did have a fairly significant snow, and I think it was this weekend. Seems to me I was making it in bravely to talk about the Commanders. It might have been the season ender where they lost at Philadelphia, and a lot to unpack. And you want to do that as soon as possible. I think, was that a Saturday? No, that was a Sunday game. So that was a significant thing. But no, I'm not going to be here on Monday. Not that you need to care or know about that, but it is what it is. All right. Spent a lot of time on Indiana yesterday, and I'm not going to spend the whole show on it, but it was really enjoyable to talk about it. And having seen it from the roots of it when I would visit my son when he was there almost 15 years ago, and nobody was at the games, and The team was bad. The game that they played here, they had sold a game to Penn State because they couldn't get enough people to be interested in going to see Indiana football, and they could get $3 million if Penn State picked up the game and played it at FedEx Field. I mean, it was a totally different era. So, when you look at what they've done here, they've done something that when we heard, they're going to be able to pay the players and there's a transfer portal so you don't have to sit out a year, well, forget it. The Blue Bloods are just going to continue to win. Everybody's going to want to go play for Nick Saban at Alabama, and they won't have to wait a year to do it. Alabama boosters? Oh, come on. They're going to come up with the most money, right? Auburn, maybe. Few schools in that area, LSU for sure. They'll come up with the cash to pay the players. It's going to happen. And Miami? Sure. I mean, Nevin Shapiro went to jail for doing what's totally legal now, giving players cash. And so we thought that was make the strong stronger. And here comes Indiana. And this headline of this AP story today, I think, says a lot about how the program was built. The headline is Kurt Cignetti, the coach, built a champion at Indiana with good players from James Madison. That would be something out of The Onion like 3 years ago. What? Wait a minute. He went to Indiana. The Indiana program that's the losingest college football program in history, that Indiana? Yeah, that Indiana. And he built a team that won a national championship with the foundation being players from where? James Madison? James Madison, the one that used to play what they called 1AA and has made the move up from FCS to FBS. But it's a nice little campus in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Quaint little place. Yeah, they were the foundation of it. Wow. What would you say about that? And in this AP story, they look at the players who came. There are 13 of them. They call it either the Baker's dozen or the Cignetti dozen. And what happened to them? What became of the 13 players who came with him, not this season, but the season before when he came to Indiana? And some of them you're now familiar with, like Mikhail Kamara, who blocked the punt on Monday night, D'Angelo Pons, who picked off the first play of the game against Oregon in the Peach Bowl. Aiden Fisher has been their star linebacker for the last 2 years. Elijah Sarrett, their leading receiver. He did have a couple of drops on Monday, but has made a huge contribution to the program. But then you look at some of the other names on this list, and some of them are not playing anymore because they only had a year of eligibility. But like Nick Kidwell, he's now the offensive line coach at Shepherd University. That's a Division III school. That's a starting job. Tyler Stevens, former offensive lineman, happily engaged and enjoying postgraduate life in Virginia. And then you got a few that have caught on with practice squads or playing in the UFL or something like that. No, this is not a build from taking the strongest of the strong and saying, come on to Indiana. It just makes it a remarkable build, a remarkable story, and you can't say it enough times about how incredible this is and how it's changed not only the face of college football, but it's maybe saved college football in that the fears that a lot of people had about this just, making it a few haves and all have-nots, not the case at all. And the strength of the SEC, last three champions have been from the Big Ten, Michigan, Ohio State, and Indiana. Amazing. And I saw some of this when I went to a couple of games with my son in Bloomington, that you would see some older fans in the stands. And clearly they were there because they had great loyalty. Maybe they were alums. Maybe they lived in Bloomington. Or, you know what? They just like being in the college football atmosphere on a Saturday afternoon. Just something that they enjoyed doing. A couple of fans that made it to the championship game in Miami on Monday night, Gene and Judy Heldman. Or Hedrick, excuse me, Gene and Junie Hedrick. And they have been season ticket holders since 1959. And they were interviewed by Dustin Grove of WTHR TV.
Gene, you have been following IU football for how many years?
I've had season tickets for 61 years.
67 years.
Wait a minute.
You know what?
66.
But who's
Who's counting?
But who's counting at this point, right? More than 60.
1959.
1959. What is it like to be here tonight and witness history?
Well, it's a privilege. Actually, it's just a blessing that I've been here this long and I could witness something like this. And I have so many friends who are up in heaven right now looking down and would love to have been here. And I think of them all the time. And they're really great people at Indiana University. And that's what the university is, great people. That's what makes a good university.
You have witnessed so much IU history, so many different chapters of IU football. Did you ever think that they would be at this moment in time?
Well, you always think, wait till next year, you know. And but no, I never thought anything like this would ever happen.
If you could say anything to Coach Curt Cignetti right now, what would you tell him?
I'd say he did perform something that no one thought would ever happen. No one.
Gene and Judy Hedrick, season ticket holders since 1959. That's a year after I was born. And you wouldn't buy season tickets if you're a student, so I would think he was at least 22, 23 years old. So do the math. 66 years as a season ticket holder, and he got to see a national championship, which he could never have imagined. When you're an Indiana football fan, not a basketball fan, but when you're an Indiana football fan, you're just hoping you get bowl eligible or you have a decent season. And 1967, you'd only been a season ticket holder for a decade or so. They made a Rose Bowl. So maybe there was reason to believe, okay, they're going to be competitive. They weren't. They were terrible. They were absolutely terrible. And now they are being mentioned among the greatest teams to ever play college football. Went over a list yesterday, listed the LSU team, Joe Burrow's team, 2019 number 1, and the 2020 Nick Saban team at Alabama, number 2. But for this team to be number 3, it's absolutely mind-blowing. PTI reaction yesterday, Tony and Mike looking at what was accomplished in this incredible run by Curt Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers.
The Hoosiers never trailed. It was 10-0 at the half and 24-14 after Fernando Mendoza made a great 12-yard run on a 4th and 4 in the fourth quarter. Miami played well, kept it a lot closer against Indiana than Alabama and Oregon did. But Indiana was better and closed out their season 16-0. Wilbon, your thoughts on how the Hoosiers did it and what it means?
Well, Tony, it was a fascinating performance of, we hear the phrase complimentary football all the time, and some nights it just ain't true. But it was last night. I mean, you get this performance from Mendoza, particularly that play. That play which is going to become iconic in very little time. But you also get a blocked punt. You get an interception in the game. All of it. They played so well, all of it. And you look at the players on Indiana's team, there's some talented players. They're a handful of 4 and 5 stars as opposed to Miami, which has like more than 50 of them. But then you look at Curt Cignetti and his staff and what they did to develop those players. And I'm looking at Tom Brady on the sideline, wondering how much of himself he might see in Mr. Mendoza and choosing him first for the Raiders if the Raiders indeed do that. So it was packed with a lot of stuff last night, that game. And Miami did play well. Miami had a chance. Maybe if that pass is about, 2 yards longer, to go ahead to win the game. They have a chance to do it. But it's one of the great, great stories of all time, the Hoosiers, and wow, they played to it again.
I'm going to sing a love song to Mendoza here because he showed that every honor he's gotten, he deserves. I mean, he was really that good last night. Well, a couple of weeks ago, we saw the Oregon quarterback, and he had a terrible night, and he was rated the second-best quarterback in the college draft, and he said after that, I'm going back to school, presumably to raise his draft stock. The other day, C.J. Stroud, 4 interceptions in the first half. The spotlight can be withering, but it was so complimentary with Mendoza. This is why the guy won the Heisman. He got hit early, Mike. They cut his lip open.
Yeah.
He was bleeding. You could see it, and he held up, and he stood up, and on that most important call of his life, that 4th and 4, he went in there like a pinball, and he made it all the way to the end zone. And, Mike, he justified everything that has been said about him to this point. You mentioned Signetti. They hired Signetti 2 years ago from James Madison. Nobody had ever heard of him, and Indiana wasn't any good. Signetti right now looks like the smartest guy to ever coach football. You Google him. He's got a national championship. Mike, it's one of the greatest seasons of all time because Indiana had never won. The last time they were in a bowl game was something called the Copper Bowl in 1991. They had not won. Nobody expected this.
No.
And from the time they won the Big Ten championship on, the teams that they beat were great teams, and they beat them. They were plus 493 on the season. It's astonishing.
The Big Ten, just to end with a note on that, I don't want to hear, let the SEC bow down, tip your cap to the Big Ten, because the Big Ten's the best conference right now. I know many, many, many years it is the SEC, but it ain't now. Not with 3 straight, Ohio State, Michigan, and now Indiana. And I don't know who's on the clock, but it's the Big Ten now.
Says the Northwestern booster, who I'm sure will be told that by the administration. Hey, Northwestern booster, look what happened nearby at Indiana. A few more bucks, and maybe you could make it happen here. Yeah, we'll see. The money has a lot to do with it for sure, but you also got to get the right people, and you get the right coach, the right situation, and a situation where, to be fair, there wasn't a lot of pressure here. Kurt Signetti could do what he wanted to do without anybody nosing into his business because they didn't really even care. That's Indiana. Indiana is a basketball school. That may have changed the other night, but it's not like going to LSU. But what Signetti proved is, when you were hearing about Lane Kiffin, well, he's at Ole Miss and he's done a great job and they're going to be in the playoff. But if he wants to win a national championship, he's going to have to go to some place like LSU. Well, he did, and he left. And the players said, good riddance, get out. He said, they wanted me to stay. No, they didn't. They wanted him out. So he's going to go to LSU, and people are going to look at him and go, well, we gave you everything you wanted. We gave you a ton of money, and we expect now to be in the mix for the national championship. Look at Indiana. Indiana hired some schmagegi out of JMU, and they had an undefeated season. So, okay, Lane, there's pressure on you now. Whereas Signetti didn't have to face that. He will now. They lose a couple games next year, and people are going to be drumming their fingers on the table. But in the meantime, he is the most celebrated person in the state of Indiana and among the most celebrated in the country. Coming up, we'll get to some NFL, what John Harbaugh said as he was introduced as coach of the Giants, and what Bob Kraft is saying that the owners want. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So the New York Giants finally introduced John Harbaugh yesterday, about a week after we heard it was a done deal. The question is, what took so long? Why did it have to happen almost a week after that? And what was going on in the meantime? And you heard all kinds of things, including, once the Bills lost, then Harbaugh was trying to get out of his deal with the Giants. I don't think that happened. But it's an interesting structure, how it's going to work with the Giants, which I'll get to here. He was actually introduced by Joe Schoen, the general manager of the team. But the interesting part of the deal is, and there's no reported on this has been confirmed, he got plenty of money to go to the Giants, gets a 5-year deal worth about $100 million. So $20 million is the way it is now for coaches. Wow. He will report directly to ownership rather than to Joe Schoen. Giants have traditionally had their coach report to the general manager, who would report to ownership. Of course, it's the way it's always worked. I mean, here we have Adam Peters hiring Dan Quinn, and that's the traditional way it worked. Even when the great success happened with Bobby Beathard and Joe Gibbs, Beathard hired Gibbs, and he had to convince Jack Kent Cook to hire him because, as Cook said, we'll be embarrassed. Nobody's ever heard of this guy. And then when he was 0-5, had to convince him to keep him, which turned out to be a pretty good move on his part. But here's the deal. Here's how this is going to work. Harbaugh and Schoen will work collaboratively and cooperatively, but it's Harbaugh who is expected to have the stronger voice given his track record of success. So you have Harbaugh with clearly a bigger voice than the GM. The GM usually hires the coach. That wasn't the case here because it was Chris Mara who did all the legwork here. His brother, John Mara, is dealing with cancer right now. So Chris is handling a lot of the family business operations. And I don't know how this is going to work because even as Gibbs became more powerful in the organization, and it was really Gibbs, getting a bigger voice with Jack Kent Cooke as the reason that Bobby Beathard left the team after the 1989 season? I think it was. Yeah, I think it was 1989 or 88. And the reason is the way things would work was if Beathard and Gibbs disagreed on something, they would go to Jack Kent Cooke and explain their positions, and he would break the tie. But he generally relied on them to do the day-to-day of the team. This is different. This is a different deal. And it doesn't seem to bode well for Shane, though Harbaugh is saying, no, we're right on the same page, and we work together, and we've both been in the league a long time. We'll do this collaboratively. Collaboratively generally doesn't work. You got to have one final voice here, and you have that here on players. I mean, Adam Peters gets the players. It's up to Quinn and the coaching staff as to who they want to keep, but that's the way things work. And it kind of reminds me of the dysfunction that was eventually settled by Pete Rozelle way back. You remember the miracle at the Meadowlands where Joe Pisarcik is handing off to Larry Zonka instead of taking a knee, and the ball is fumbled. Herman Edwards picks it up and takes it in for a touchdown. And that was like, the bottom for all Giant fans. And there was a banner that was flown over the stadium next week, 34 years or whatever it had been of losing football. We've had enough. And at the time, there was dysfunction in the ownership. Wellington Mara was Tim Mara, the original owner of the team, who I think got the team in a card game or something like that. He was the son, Wellington Mara, fine man. Got to meet him a few times. And his nephew, Tim Mara. Tim Mara, although that was his name, his nephew's name was Tim. And there was like a split ownership there. And they each had a box, and they had a curtain put up inside the box so they wouldn't even have to look at each other during the game. And finally, Pete Rozelle intervened, and he said, this is ridiculous. You need to have somebody with real football experience running your operation. Convinced him to hire George Young. George Young promoted Bill Parcells, and the rest is history. And Parcells and Young didn't get along, by the way. And that doesn't have to be a problem either. You can actually work well with that. But you got to have somebody with the say, and I just wonder how this is going to work out with Harbaugh directly going to the owner. I mean, it seems like he's easily going to be able to cut the legs out from underneath Shane, and somebody who has control of the roster shouldn't have that disadvantage. But sunshine and lollipops yesterday as Harbaugh was, in fact, finally officially introduced as the new head coach of the New York Football Giants.
It's a profound honor to be entrusted with the responsibility of coaching the New York Football Giants. And my dad taught me that they were the New York Football Giants. They weren't just the Giants or they were the New York Football Giants, right, Dad? All the way back. One of the most iconic franchises in all of sports. I wanted this job. I think I told you that, Mr. Mayor. I wanted this job. And to be on the biggest stage in the biggest sport. I know the challenges. I understand the expectations. I know the fans are hungry for a winner. We're here with one mission: to earn the right to be called the world champions in New York. And that's what we plan to do.
Oh, good luck. He looks great, keeps himself in great shape. Reminder, he's 63 years old. When Joe Gibbs came back in 2004 and really didn't have the fastball that he had first time around, he was 64. So, we'll see. We'll see how this works out, and we'll see how it works out with this structure that they have in place. This was interesting yesterday. Bob Kraft was on a radio station in Boston. It's 98.5, the Sports Hub. And Boston sports radio is crazy. Like, there's two stations, and both of them are in like the top 5 in the city. They stray from sports, But it's a big deal to be on sports radio in Boston. That's a really huge thing. And Zolak, you may remember, was quarterback at Maryland and was a backup in the league for a few years, most of it with the Patriots, and I guess he settled there and has found a career in sports radio. So they had Bob Kraft on. And not that this is any kind of earth-shattering news, because we've been expecting it for a long time, and it hasn't been put in place yet. But usually what the owners want, the owners get. And what Kraft is saying is, we're just going to rearrange the schedule a little bit. Right now, we're playing 17 regular season games, 3 exhibition games. We're just going to make it 18 regular season games, 2 exhibition games. And by the way, everybody's going to have to play in Europe. And you could say, well, the players are going to put up a stink about that. Yeah, they always do. And the owners go, here's $1 billion, shut up. And so here's Kraft explaining the owner's position on where things are headed.
I want to tell you guys, though, we're going to push like the Dickens now to make international more important with us. Every team will go to 18-2, and eliminate one of the preseason games, and every team every year will play one game overseas. And part of the reason is so we can continue to grow the cap and keep our labor happy, because we're sort of getting near the top here, with the coverage. 93 of the top 100 programs on television are NFL games. Right. Think about that. It's really amazing. And you look at the size of our crowds versus the other sports, and it's really, and we had that Amazon game on Thursday a couple of weeks ago. 31 million people streamed. And so as long as we can keep growing revenue, we can keep long-term labor peace.
First of all, Bob Kraft, you have to be over 80 to use the word Dickens. Hear anybody under 80 use the word Dickens? No. And when he says we're going to fight like the Dickens, meaning we're just going to tell the players that's it, 18 games. And they have the ability to do that with an amendment to the agreement right now. There's an opener in 2029, so we're a few years away from it. But they want to squeeze out more TV money. They're kicking themselves because they didn't really see the future of streaming. So, he's talking about 31 million people watching on Prime. He's thinking, oh, man, we missed an opportunity here, because the NBA, their deal is huge. They're like $7 billion a year. The NFL's like 11. Well, the NFL is going to try and double that. And he's also saying, well, we're hitting our head on the ceiling here in U.S. coverage. He used the word coverage, meaning television contracts, even though they're without question going to open things up in 2029 and shake some more money out of the networks, because the networks have to have it. The 93 of the top 100 programs were NFL football last year. So they're keeping it afloat, and they'll pay whatever it takes. And when he's saying 18 games, that's more product to sell. And to keep labor peace, it just means they're going to tell the players, here's more money, but the owners are also making more money. It's a revenue split. That's how the salary cap works. They're looking at the money gushing so fast that what they're like searching around for extra buckets to catch it. You remember that show? I think it was called Diamond Head. It was a game show, and the way it worked was the winning contestant would be put in this glass tube, and money would just fly all over the place from shot out of vacuum cleaners, all over the place, and you had to grab as much as you can. That's where the owners are right now, and they're looking at it like, we only got 17. We're going to need 18, and there's more money overseas. Yeah, everybody's going to play an overseas game, so we're going to have. Now think of this. Here we are with 3 games left in the football season, the 2 championship games on Sunday and the Super Bowl 2 weeks later. And I think, I don't know how everybody else feels, but this is the way I feel. It's like, oh, yeah, I could probably handle some more football here. Because sitting on the couch on Sunday is just so normal now. And, will we be doing it ultimately in May and June? No, probably not. But the reality is you can't have too much football. And we had a national championship game in college football Had it been like it was a few years ago where TCU just, was not even on the same playing field. Was it Alabama that won? I don't even remember who won, but it was not a game. We don't have that anymore. What we have now is a very competitive product and a great weekend of playoffs this past weekend. 2 more games to go. I think people are going to be wanting for more. So the owners are saying, hey, all this money's flying at us. We'll just tell the players 18, and they'll do it because they'll get more money. When he says labor peace, that means we shut them up with more cash. And this is going to segue into what I want to talk about here with Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham is going to be the quarterback for the Denver Broncos on Sunday afternoon when they take on the New England Patriots. Do you think that there would be 1/1,000,000th of a percentage point difference in television ratings if Bo Nix were playing for the Denver Broncos instead of Stidham? Now, perhaps, Stidham throws 3 picks in the first half and, Denver's down by 30 points in the second half and everybody tunes it off to do I don't know what. But the reality is people are going to watch it. They don't care who the quarterback is. It's player proof. It's market proof. It's a product that people have to have. It's like crack. You got to have it. And it doesn't matter whether it's really good crack or whether it's potentially bad crack. And Chase Daniel is kind of an example of what you can fall down to in quarterback play. He spent most of his career as a third stringer, but occasionally he had to play. And I think over the course of like a 14-year career, he had 4 starts. One of them was on Thanksgiving Day. And so he's now an analyst, and he's very qualified to be an analyst, by the way, because he's been in so many different rooms. He went from team to team, and he saw how offensive coordinators and head coaches put together offense. So he knows a lot about football, and he's very glib, and he's smart, and so he does various podcasts and things on ESPN. He does something with Diana Rossini for The Athletic. He's well schooled in football. So Daniel speaks from experience as somebody who has stepped in and played, and also somebody who knows offensive football. And when he was on with Dan Patrick yesterday, he explained to him what he expects to see out of Jarrett Stidham on Sunday.
New England, to me, defensively, they do so many different things to confuse the quarterback. When I'm out there and I have the clicker and I'm just watching it on my iPad, I'm like, what coverage are they in? So imagine being on the field trying to see this, and you haven't started a game in forever. The one thing about Jarrett Stidham as a quarterback, like, the team loves him, and not only loves him, but loves what he could do. He's played really well the times he's done. Here's one thing about Sean Payton, and this is talking from a backup quarterback standpoint, where I've come in a short week's rest, Thanksgiving Day, 2018, and was able to go out there and play really well. Sometimes as a backup, when you don't overthink it and you're not trying to get so involved in the game plan, you just go out there and play and just let your adrenaline take over and just let your pure progression passing take over. I like it. I think Sean, knowing who Sean is at his core, he's going to make this work. And I do think they probably are more aggressive than a lot of people think throwing the football. He's not changing the game plan. I promise you that. It is the exact same game plan. They're going to go in and probably take the quarterback run out. They have to muster up some type of run game. But I really think they're going to be aggressive, throwing the football down the field. And I think City plays pretty well.
It's not quite the same thing, but when he said, just unclutter your mind, I don't know the exact term that he used, but it was something like that. It reminded me of Clint Longley. This is not the same thing because Stidham's been around the league for a while, and he started, I think, 4 or 5 games during his career, whereas Clint Longley, rookie Abilene Christian with the Cowboys in 1974. Now, 1974 was the last of the quarterback controversy between Craig Morton and Roger Staubach. And there was even a game early in the season where Tom Landry had each of them alternate plays, which was a disaster. They lost, I believe, to the Bears. So at the trade deadline, and things like this don't happen very often these days, or didn't happen that often those days, but they traded they traded Craig Morton in the division. He was sent to the New York Giants at the trade deadline, 1974. So Staubach is the starter, and Longley is the backup, and they're playing the Redskins on Thanksgiving Day, 1974. And during the week, Dyron Talbert says, You knock Staubach out of the game, all they have is that kid. Well, that's what happened. They knock Staubach out of the game. The kid comes in. Clint Longley throws 2 touchdown bombs. Cowboys win the game. One of the most famous Thanksgiving games ever, the most brutal days of football here in Washington. And Cowboys win the game. Larry Cole, his teammate, Cowboys defensive tackle, said the triumph of the uncluttered mind. Meaning, they just throw Longley in there. Who knew if he knew the plays? He just went back and chucked it. And Drew Pearson caught the winning touchdown pass, and the Cowboys beat the Redskins. That's not going to be quite the case with Stidham, but what he's saying is, Stidham until the final moments of that game last week had no idea he'd be starting the NFC Championship game, and now he's going to start the AFC Championship game, and now he's going to start. So there's that factor in it as well. So I found that to be interesting. The other thing you might ask yourself, not that he's eligible to play in this game, but after what you saw from C.J. Stroud last week, would you rather have Jarrett Stidham starting for you on Sunday if you're a Broncos fan, or C.J. Stroud, who has been the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans? What has happened to him? This is more from Chase Daniel on what he's seen from Stroud.
It's one of those things where if he's not seeing the first read clearly and he's having a hard time progressing within the pocket to his next read, that's where it gets muddy and he just makes bad decisions, right? You know it more than anyone. Quarterback play, especially in the NFL, is, you got to have all the arm strength and the throat. You can't make bad decisions. You can't turn the football over and expect to win, right? He was the liability. And I think when you get in a point like that, and you get in a point where you're just pressing constantly, more bad plays are going to happen to you. And it's just, I don't think that they're going to move on from him. I think they're going to pick up the 5th-year option. But it is getting to a point where if you aren't sure that C.J. Stroud's your guy, you got to start looking elsewhere. Everyone remembers the rookie season, but those next 2 have just been okay.
And this is the danger that we see. We saw this with Tua. We saw this with Kyler. And I got to be sure. If I'm giving you a couple of $100 million, I'm sorry, I might be hurting your feelings. You got to show me one more year. And even with C.J. Stroud, you might show me one more year, I'll franchise. Like, I'm just not giving you that kind of money. If you said to Miami you can do a do-over, they would do a do-over. Arizona with Kyler Murray. There's certain guys, Josh Allen got extended after, I think, 3 years. I understand that, or Joe Burrow. But these guys aren't Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. So that temptation of, or I'm going to hurt your feelings if I don't extend you. Man, I'm sorry. This is big boy business here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And in the way that it's situated with first-round picks, I'm sure a lot of people follow and understand. You have the 5th-year option. Then you can technically go back-to-back franchise tags. So you have a first-year pick under contract for 7 years without you having to actually extend them. Now, a lot of people don't do that a la Kirk Cousins because it gets really expensive, and those franchise tags are guaranteed money. So they still have a little bit of time. And I think when you looked at and talked to D'Amico Ryans or when he had his post-game interview, he was like, hey, we got a little bit of time here. But during that time, it's like, hey, we got to start looking at, hey, what's in the draft, what's there, and what's in free agency. So you do have a little bit of time because technically first-round picks, you can have them under contract really for 7 years.
Yeah, but that really doesn't work well. When you're franchising a guy, you're saying to him, we're not really sure about you. And you want to have confidence in the guy. And the other thing this could be a window into is what could happen with Jaden Daniels. I don't think we'll have a year 3 like last year or this past season. But what if there is C.J. Stroud tendencies there, interceptions, bad decisions? I don't think that'll be the case, but because it's assumed. Stroud is a year ahead. He was drafted a year before. It's assumed that after this upcoming season, they will work on an extension for Jaden Daniels because he would be going into year 4. And then once you get to year 4, there's the 5th-year option for the team. But you really don't want to let it get to that because theoretically, he could say at the end of the 3rd year, if you don't work out a deal, fine, I'm just going to play year 4. And then I'll play under my option for year 5, which you would exercise anyway, and then I'll just become a free agent. So he picks up the leverage at the end of next season. That's why this is such a key thing. But I don't think Chase Daniel's formula is that simple. I think it's more complicated than that, and you have to think about a lot of things. Look at how things worked out here with Kirk Cousins. I mean, would Kirk Cousins have won a Super Bowl here? Nah, probably not. But they would have had quarterback stability. They would have had a better situation than they had in what followed. Some of it, happenstance, the horrible broken leg that Alex Smith suffered against Houston, all that. But reality is you don't want to do 2 years of a franchise tag, that especially for a quarterback. That, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. Coming up, you thought that college basketball and the portal and how eligibility works couldn't get more chaotic? Oh, you'd be wrong. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
With football, everything gets swallowed up, and you maybe don't pay attention to some really good stories as you might in other times of the year. But this has been going on in the teeth of the home stretch of the NFL and the playoffs and all that. At Baylor, there's a basketball player named James Nanji. And James Nanji was picked number 31 in the NBA draft. And he went to play professionally for 3 years, and 2 of those years for a powerhouse in Barcelona. He decided he wanted to go back to college. He wanted to go back to Baylor. And Baylor was allowed to bring him back. He had not played in the NBA. He played professionally overseas, but there's precedent for that. Other players have gone overseas and played. Now, and he got, by the way, he got reinstated for the second semester. He didn't play the first half of the year. Now he's on the team. There's an Alabama player. He was a former star with Alabama, Charles Bediako, who's 7 feet tall. And I say star. He was a good player for them. He averaged 6.6 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 1.7 blocks from the 2021 to the 2023 season, 2 seasons at Alabama. He was selected in the 2023 draft, but never played in an NBA game. He did sign a 2-way contract with the Spurs, but the Spurs never brought him to San Antonio. So he is now suing so that he can get reinstated to Alabama for the rest of this season. He wants to be reinstated for whatever's left of this year. So what do we got? We got the rest of January, February, and however far they go in March. The school's appeal was denied to the NCAA. They said, can we bring him back? No. He left. He went to play professionally. No. Well, how about we sue you? So they're going to sue, and they're going to see if he come back. Now, there won't be more eligibility after this season because his career started in 2021. And at least there is a rule in the NCAA. Maybe they can sue for this too. But there's a rule that you have to complete your 4 seasons of eligibility in 5 years. So that would be the end of the 5-year clock at the end of this season, 2026. But this is just symptomatic of what is going on with no rules in place. And John Calipari, he's still hanging in there, still getting paid a lot of money. It doesn't hurt. But, we've seen the guys like Mike Krzyzewski, check out, and Jim Boeheim was pushed out the door. Rick Pitino's still doing his thing, but he was always slick Rick. This system might actually suit him pretty well. Calipari, always had the one-and-dones at Kentucky, benefited greatly from getting the greatest high school players, telling them, you have a great year, you go right to the NBA. We got a pipeline here. And so now he's at Arkansas, and his way of doing business really doesn't work anymore because other schools are bringing in, for example, guys who are older and, in this case, professionals. So Calipari does a lot of post-game whining. And whether you agree with it or you don't, he's compelling at making his case. And this was Calipari looking at this situation and going, basically, WTF.
Real simple. You got 5 years to play 4. If you stay at the same school 4 years, we'll give you a 5th year. If your coach leaves or is fired, you can transfer without penalty. You can do it once, and if the coach is fired or leaves, you can end up doing it twice. But after that, you got to sit out. You can transfer, but you got to sit out. Does anybody care what this is doing for 17 and 18-year-old American kids? Do you know what this opportunity has done for them and their families? There aren't going to be any high school kids. Who other than dumb people like me are going to recruit high school kids? I get so much satisfaction out of coaching young kids and seeing them grow and make it and their family life changes that I'm going to keep doing it. But why would anybody else, if you can get NBA players, G League players, guys that are 28 years old, guys from Europe, do we really know their transcript? Do we have somebody over there? Do we really know their birth certificate? Or don't we? And then, there's no. Look, Tommy Izzo, Mark Few, there are a bunch of us that are just, we got no rules. Why did they let that kid play? Tell us all. Here's what the reason. Then we'll all go get pros.
You have pros. They're all pros now, John. They all get paid. They all get money. Problem is you don't have rules. So some schools are more savvy at doing things like Baylor, getting a professional in there, and what Arkansas or Alabama is trying to do here. And, your altruistic view here, I want to help kids, I want to help families. Yeah. You want to help yourself. You did pretty well. You make a lot of money. Made what does he make, $10 million? You got chicken money, Purdue chicken money to go to Arkansas. So until the NCAA or whoever the governing body is, because the NCAA is basically a wet dish rag, governing body says, here's how we're going to do it. Kid comes in, he signs a 2-year contract. And at the end of the 2-year contract, we decide whether we want to give him another one or tell him to hit the skids. Or does he want to leave after 1 year? Fine. He's got to buy his way out, just like a coach. He's got to work that way. And then you got Duke. Duke has their quarterback that they're suing, Darian Mensah. They gave him a contract. It was a 2-year deal, reportedly worth $8 million, $4 million a year. And he has now entered the transfer portal. So Duke is taking him to court. They say, whoa, what about the contract? The contract. The reason that he's reportedly going to Miami to replace Carson Beck is $4 million is not top money anymore. That he can make maybe $7.5 million for 1 year to go to Miami. So he's going to go to Miami with no rules in place. What are you going to do? Duke is arguing that Mensah should not be allowed to enter the transfer portal until they engage in arbitration with two sides to determine, what's going on here with the contract. Yeah, good luck with that. His agency, the agency for Mensah, is called Young Money. Of course it is. And they're working with sports attorney Darian Heitner to navigate the suit. Heitner told CBS Sports the lawsuit shouldn't have been filed in the first place for a variety of reasons. You can't restrain the movement of athletes from one school to another. Well, you could if you had a contract. He says there's no provision in the agreement that removes a requirement that Duke put the player in the portal within 48 business hours of a request. So, it's again, the NCAA, they fought this and fought, student athletes, we can't pay the players. The Supreme Court goes, yeah, you're going to have to pay the players its salary. So they just threw their arms up in the air, and there's no plan. There's no system. There's no rules. And here we are. But you know what? I like watching the games. It doesn't matter to me as a fan. It doesn't matter to the fan base. And the coaches can yell and scream all they want. As long as the television numbers are okay and people are showing up at the games, that's really all that matters in the grand scheme of things. All right, coming up, we'll talk more about the playoffs coming up this weekend. Jeff Saturday with a pretty good preview of that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Before we get to the football, there's significant, I think, development in the Hall of Fame voting for baseball. You know that two got in yesterday, Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones. Beltran on the ballot for the fourth time. Not that close. Got 84% when 75% was needed. It was pretty close for Andrew Jones, who only had one more year of eligibility on the writer's ballot. So he gets in. And the thing about Beltran is, yes, numbers indicate he's a Hall of Fame player. But, he was implicated in the sign stealing scandal when he was with the Astros. And that was overlooked in this. On top of that, and this is, I think, the most significant development in this, is that Alex Rodriguez got 40%. You need 75, got 40%. But Last year he got 7%. They did a new documentary on him on, was it Netflix? I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but you also had Andy Pettit. Andy Pettit, remember Andy misremembers? He was in the Mitchell Report and talked about Clemens' steroid use, which is so far kept Clemens out. But Andy Pettit got 48.5% of the vote in his 8th year on the ballot. Last year, he got 27.9%. So he got almost twice as much this year. And there are Hall of Fame voters who I know, prominent ones like Tim Kirkjian, who say that he would put Barry Bonds, that he put Roger Clemens in the Hall of Fame. He said, because you don't know who is using what. He says he understands that, not everybody would agree with that. But what's happening here with these numbers, maybe it's not a seismic shift, but it's something to keep an eye on. That's a big deal for Alex Rodriguez. He has Hall of Fame numbers for sure and has admitted steroid use, whereas Bonds and Clemens have not. I don't know if that works in his favor in any way, but, could we see a day where those type of players who have the numbers, Sammy Sosa, throw him in, that they get in and we move on. But the old guard, they don't want to do it. They don't want to put these guys in, and so far that's keeping them out. But I think those numbers are numbers to keep an eye on and see what happens as we move forward into next year. As for the football, the big storyline going into the Denver game against New England on Sunday is Jarrett Stidham. That Bo Nix is hurt, broke his ankle at the end of the game against Buffalo, and he's going to be replaced by a journeyman guy who hasn't taken a snap in 2 years. But there's also the Denver defense versus a relatively inexperienced quarterback in Drake May, who's had a great year. And they brought on Jeff Saturday, as they usually do on PTI. I think he's once a week guest. And they talked to him about the protection that May is going to have on Sunday.
The Patriots' pass protection has struggled, and now they come up against the Denver Broncos, who actually lead the league in sacks. From the perspective of an offensive lineman, how can the Patriots improve?
Well, first of all, the last two teams, or the two teams that are playing last week and this week, are nightmares anyway. So, you got the best edge guys. They're pushing pressure. You have a young guy in Campbell going to try to take the edge. But the reality is they're going to get some kind of pressure. It's making sure from an offensive line perspective, you keep your body between he and the QB. Make him reach over you. Make him do those kind of things. And then it's on Drake May to protect the football when he's in the pocket. Keep two hands on it. Be strong. Don't let those strip sacks. What you don't want to do is get on an edge and get driven all the way back and give up these free shots. Like that's the worst thing. But if you're talking about strictly from an offensive line perspective, be aggressive in your set, make the guy run the long way around, whether you're guards or tackles, make them go the edge, and May's going to have to be strong in the pocket, stepping up, not just trying to run outside and push the ball down the field. But the reality is they're facing the two best groups in the AFC the last 2 weeks. Some guy, they're on scholarship too, you know what I mean, Tony? So they're going to get home at some point.
Jeff, meanwhile, the Broncos are going to turn to Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. So what is involved? Give us the most complex things involved when an offensive line has to adjust, and I'm sure there are many adjustments, to a brand new quarterback, particularly in a game of this magnitude.
Yeah, I would say this. When you're at the line of scrimmage and you're going to have to make some kind of adjustment, whether it's an adjustment in pass protection, an adjustment in an audible, whether it's going from a run to a pass or pass to a run, whatever it is, and the defense shifts or moves in the middle of the cadence. Because we all, human nature, the speed of the cadence changes at times. You get very accustomed as an offensive line to listening to Bo Nix for week after week after week. And all of a sudden you got a new voice. You have a new way that he wants to kind of go about it. His brain processes a little bit different. And Sean Payton's going to do a great job of trying not to allow that to happen too much. But it's the most complicated part because it's the timing of everything. We always talk about the timing of a passing game. Well, there's timing of the run game and there's timing of protection and checks and audibles. All of those things are going to have to be worked through during this week. It is very difficult. The great part for them, they're playing at home. If this was on the road, it would be significantly worse, but at least they'll have the cadence to kind of to lean back on. But there ain't nothing easy about it. And let me tell you, the Patriots do a fantastic job of kind of mucking it up in the back where you don't know exactly what they're doing. Guys kind of jicky-jack around. They're not kind of in the place they may end up. there's a lot of communication that's going to have to occur for that Broncos offensive line, who's done a good job, but they're going to have to be even better with Stidham at the helm.
Behind every healthcare statistic is a person's face, paying the price.
Should have made an edit here. There we go.
Let's go back for a minute to something that pains me. Rams-Bears, and Rams head coach Sean McVay says afterward that he has to be a better play caller, Jeff, after abandoning the run for a lot of the game against the Bears. And I want to ask something in general, really. Why is it that so many great play callers, and Sean McVay is clearly one of them, why do they abandon the run? Like, when things start to, anything happens, abandon the run. We've seen that. What happens?
Explosive plays. And I tell people this all the time. If you looked at last year with the Philadelphia Eagles, what made their offense so good was Saquon Barkley explosive runs, right? It's a low risk, high reward. Well, you get in these games, and all of a sudden, you want to make sure you're getting first downs, you're moving the ball, you're flipping the field per se, like getting on their side of the 50. Even if you're not scoring points, you're making them go the long way. And coaches, they just forget. And I've been involved in games where you go in with the idea or the concept, hey, we're going to run the ball, we can physically dominate this team, and they start off doing that. And you kind of fade away, and then you kind of catch back up at the end of the game. But he's exactly right. You got to stick to who you are. Physicality matters. Opening up for play action and plays down the field. All those explosive plays come from the defense getting closer to the line of scrimmage. If you don't stay physical with them, they'll stay back and make your passing game much more difficult. But again, it's much easier said than done. And when you're a design maniac like Sean McVay, you can think of all these great concepts. Yeah. It's hard. And you got a Hall of Fame quarterback. So you're like, why not? Like, why not put the best at the best? But at times, physicality is the most important, and he understands that. He needs to make sure he gets with that with the Seahawks this week.
Just to follow for 1 second quickly. As a veteran offensive lineman, can you ever go and stand next to the play caller, particularly if it's the head coach who's on the sideline, and say, yo, coach, hand it to Saquon?
Absolutely. They all are. Hey, listen, go YouTube me and Manning on the sideline. That's exactly what that is. Don't tell me about any checks in the red zone. Don't tell me about we're throwing some passes. We're going to run the ball down their throat. We better get to it. Every offensive lineman better feel comfortable enough to walk up to Sean. We can't just sit here and throw it all around now. We're not playing in the park. Let's go hit him in the mouth and take some physicality. But absolutely, O-line say that. But you better. That's what we do best.
Yeah, I did YouTube it. It took place in 2009 as the Colts were heading to the Super Bowl where they knocked off the Saints. And Tom Moore just retired. He's like maybe close to 80. He's a long-time NFL assistant coach, offensive coordinator, and he was the offensive coordinator for the Colts when Peyton Manning was there. And you see this sideline shot where he's looking over what they're going to do, and Jeff Saturday is over there lobbying Tom Moore to run the ball. Offensive linemen always want to run the ball. I learned this from Joe Jacoby, who said that it's easier to run block than pass block. When you're run blocking, you're delivering the blow. When you're pass blocking, you're accepting the blow. So linemen always want to run the ball. Always want to run the ball. So that's what was happening here back in 2009. Here's Jeff Saturday on the sideline trying to get Tom Moore to run the ball more. And Manning is also sitting down, but he's not in that little scrum there about what Moore is doing, but he's hearing what's going on, and he decides, oh, wait a minute here. And this is a legendary exchange between two teammates who I'm sure love each other and have certainly an intimate relationship, given where, when they didn't run shotgun, where Peyton's hands were. But this is what happened. What is it now? 16 years ago. Peyton Manning and Jeff Saturday with the Indianapolis Colts.
Hey, quit calling the plays, all right?
Hey, we got to run the ball. Six down there.
Let me pass block. We'll run the ball.
Can we run it down there?
Just play.
We run it down
Yeah,
there.
Jeff.
Okay, so
we will. All right, when we call pass plays, block. He's calling plays.
Go sit down.
He's calling plays. I will sit down. Don't quit yelling.
Hey, go sit down.
No, we're cool, but y'all quit yelling.
over here telling us how to block.
He's doing it.
Come on, okay.
He's yelling at us.
You don't have to go yet.
No. I'm mic'd up, too. I'm mic'd up.
Yeah, he knew he was mic'd up. And What I'm told, that happens a lot more than you might think. Doesn't always get played out in the open like that. The audio isn't always heard because players aren't mic'd up. But there's a player named Kevin Green who's in the Hall of Fame. And it was a game against the Redskins many years ago. And he was arguing with the assistant coach. And he pushed the assistant coach. And it was like, whoa, how can you have that? And I talked to the next day Matt Millen. Matt Millen was doing radio shows from our station. They would record a show that he did with Dan Miller. And he said, he says, the cameras just pick up things more often. He says, I once threw a phone at an assistant. In fact, I was able to find that later on, that those things happen. But that was a sideline thing. But, yes, offensive linemen always want to run the ball. And in the playoffs, they tend to run it more. Now, it's not supposed to be snowing in Denver, but it's going to be 28 degrees. How that affects the passing game and the run game, I'm not sure. But the run game becomes more prominent when you get to the playoffs. One more on the playoffs, and this was Ross Tucker on yesterday. And Bears are not in it this year, but Tucker is giving you the preview for next year that he expects it to play out pretty much like it did for Washington this year. Maybe not all the injuries, but the magical carpet ride that the Bears had this year, he says, don't expect the same thing.
They're not going to win 7 games in the final 2 minutes next year.
Yeah.
They're not going to have by far the most takeaways and be plus 22 next year. The Bears next year feel very similar going into the season as the Commanders this year, in the sense that there's a lot to be excited about, but you're probably going to see some regression in a couple areas to the mean.
Yeah, I think the Bears were a better story than they were a team, and I agree with you. But they felt like they got further than they were expected to, maybe a year ahead, like the Commanders felt like they were a year ahead of schedule. You got the Rams now against Seattle again. How do you think this one plays out?
I like the Seahawks. I thought the Rams were the best team most of the season. It kind of feels like ever since the fourth quarter of that Seahawks-Rams game, that Thursday night game, whatever week that was, 14 or 15, feels like the Seahawks have been the best team. Stafford has not played well under pressure in these last 2 playoff games. Wait till you play Seattle. I mean, those guys, they come at you, Leonard Williams and DeMarcus Lawrence and Byron Murphy, and Mike McDonald's probably the best defensive mind in the NFL right now. And I just think the Rams, it feels like they're running out of gas a little bit, whereas the Seahawks came flying out of the gate. They're young, they're healthy, they're playing at home. The only way, in my mind, the Rams win that game is if the disparity of quarterback is that significant.
Well,
Stafford has to play MVP caliber, and Darnold has to be average or below for the Rams to win.
It's incumbent upon Seattle to be able to run the football, to put Sam Darnold in a position where he doesn't have to be Matthew Stafford.
No question, it'll be a little bit tougher. Zach Charbonnet, torn ACL. Charbonnet was huge against the Niners week 18. There's a lot to be said for having that 1-2 punch. Walker's probably a little bit more gifted, but he's injury prone. Can he carry the entire load by himself for the entire game? That is one thing that helps the Rams out a little bit, that the Seahawks don't have that 1-2 punch to come at you in waves, and those guys have different styles, so it's almost like 2 pitchers throwing different pitches at you.
That's Ross Tucker on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday. I'll bookend this with it. Started with some baseball. Here's some baseball to finish up before we get to a break here. Tom Lavero wrote about this. Was it today or yesterday? Yeah, I think it was yesterday. And it's about the labor crisis that baseball is facing. I mean, the way things are rolling down the tracks right now, there is going to be a lockout. It may not lock out the entire 2027 season, but it's going to knock out some significant time. And I unless some miracle happens, that's the way we're going. And He points to the Kyle Tucker contract the other day, 4 years, $240 million for a team that has an unbelievable payroll now, and he said that could prove to be the catalyst for the work stoppage. And he quotes a couple of the prominent writers on this, that Jeff Passan said that what both the owners and players need to do as the collective bargaining agreement expires is listen to the fans. Fans feel right now like the game is unfair. You can certainly understand how they feel this way. The Dodgers' current payroll is $414 million, according to the website. That's 4 times more than the lowest spending team in baseball, the Miami Marlins. In between, 16 other teams are spending half of what the Dodgers are shelling out. And as he points out, it's the only major sport without a salary cap. NFL, NBA, NHL, they all have it. And teams can spend as much as they want without penalty except for the luxury tax. And the Dodgers didn't seem to mind paying $169 million in luxury tax. So as a deterrent for bloating your payroll to over $400 million, 168 on top of that, big deal. It's like sour cream on the baked potatoes. So what? And then this is the gist of what Tom is saying here. Watch out for Trump. 1994, remember that strike, knocked out the World Series, and we had Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was the president then, and he tried to intervene, trying to get both sides to the White House for negotiations. It's hard to believe that it didn't get as much attention as something like that now would. But, yeah, Bill Clinton, big sports fan, he wanted baseball. So he tried to get both sides to the table in the White House, and that didn't work. He also then introduced Major League Baseball Restoration Act. That went nowhere. And as Tom says, if there is a work stoppage in baseball, there will be no keeping Donald Trump out of it. He'll likely see it as a winning issue for him, one that even in the smorgasbord of daily news that devours the Trump's presidency will be front and center. He can't keep his hands out of the sports section. He weighed in on the Hall of Fame, demanding that the late Pete Rose be inducted. He has threatened to pull World Cup games out of cities that he is not pleased with, yet received a manufactured peace prize for the, the FIFA Peace Prize that he got. He wants the new Washington Commanders Stadium to be named after him. I don't think that's going to happen. And then Saturday night on his Truth Social app, he announced he plans to sign an executive order preventing any football games from going head-to-head with the Army-Navy game. Okay, we'll see where that goes as well. But as Tom says, you think he's going to sit out a baseball lockout? Yeah, that could be. And the one thing we didn't get from Clinton, as I remember, unless there was something there, there was no threat, no threatening of what he was going to do to people. And Trump, that's his ball game. We're just going to have to take, it's a blue state. We'll just take your baseball team away. Not that he could do it, but there'll be that kind of threat. So. That is worth considering. That's worth considering as well. All right, that's it for me today. Bram is coming up next, and I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.